Okay, first up is Mary, and see that you have the character in the environment, which is interesting and useful, but what we really most need is the character in T-pose. That's with the arms out to the side, legs parallel, feet facing forward, and then from both the front and the side view, and that's what you'll need for modeling. So whether you're using this design or you get a design, I think this image you can't use for modeling your character, and that's what we most need. I saw you had a couple PDFs as well, an image I think also from the Natural History Museum, and more the merrier of those to help you get a sense of the space and model it. And then this illustration as well. Oops, that's not zoom in. It looks like it's from a print version of that. So yeah, again, it looks sort of like a Lara Croft or Lara Croft type character. And again, that's helpful. That's fine, but you need the character in T pose, arms out to the side, palms facing down, legs parallel, feet facing forward, both from the front and side, and maybe some more detail to work with on the face on that. So yeah, so in your last revision, make sure you have a one, and the front and side view needs to be symmetrical, and so you should have horizontal lines that kind of make sure that everything's at the same height and proportions. Next up is Francis, and this is looking good. I think this can work well. I think one thing is that when the arms are up at the side, you'll see a bit more shoulder shape. So get a little more shoulder shape here. The maybe something to more kind of suggest the eyelids, because right now it doesn't look like he has any eyelids. And a little bit more detail on the nose shape to describe the nose. Make sure the mouth is in a pretty neutral position. Also, it would be good to have a couple studies of the hands, just the hands in a very neutral position, the fingers straight out in as kind of straight position as you can manage without, but leaving a gap between each finger. And you can use photo reference for that. It's a really good idea. Um, Yeah, and again, looking good from the side. I like the way you've done the arm. It's good you have the hand like this, and so we see a little more detail in the hand, but don't have the fingers pressed together. They should be spread apart at least a little bit, so leave some gaps in there. And I think you might want to do a little bit of a close-up on the hand just to get the detail there, because you want to have some kind of indication of each knuckle. Um, from the side, the thigh bow's looking a little long to me. The knee's looking a little low, so you might consider moving that up a little bit. But otherwise, I think this would be pretty useful for modeling. And yeah, another good study for the face. One thing to remember is that it looks like he's got a bit of a smile, so you're going to want to make sure that it's in a more neutral pose, because we'll be modeling it in kind of a neutral pose, and maybe a little bit more of indication of lips, what the lips look like. But overall, this is very good work. It's very good, clean work, very clear line that should be easy to work with to create your model. And again, just as I said in the other view, like an indication of eyelids, what the eyelids look like, how they work. This is a good illustration, interesting color palette. You might want to think a little bit more about what kind of details on the ground. Maybe there's like a well-worn path, or maybe not. Maybe there's rocks or pebbles or something. I think there is a sense of depth, and that's good. I think one thing that would help you when beginning to model this is to do a bird's eye view, sort of floor plan kind of point of view of the environment. I think this will be very useful, but I think that'll be good to just get a better sense of the distances and the layouts. But it's interesting, and there's some good opportunity for some interesting lighting and so forth. So I think this could work well, but I just think a few more details, and then something that helps, like I said, like a floor plan kind of point of view to give you the proportions, from above on everything. I think this is going to, so far it's better than your last design, although one thing I feel like you've lost a little bit of is some more of the shape. So, um, these kind of leg pieces are sort of perfect cylinders, whereas I think on the kind of the more traditional anatomical man posable thing is there a little bit more they're more like they're wider at the top, narrow at the middle. They kind of follow the shape of the anatomy for. So I think if you still want to keep this in these simple shapes, that's gonna be all right. But I think let's try to get some of the anatomy back into it rather than having these be perfect cylinders. Have they been make them look like little carved shapes for each of those. And the rigging is going to be just different. You're not going to be able to just bind it to the skeleton like you normally would because otherwise these kind of rigid shapes are going to bend into form. So that's several modules away, but it'll be a whole other little project to get that working. I think you need to think through a little bit more on how the foot hinge works and what that's going to look like. And again, what does this hinge look like from the side? I mean, this one's pretty clear. I guess it's like a ball hinge, and those are as well. I think you could get a little bit more. Again, this face design, at least from the front, is looking very kind of like a two-dimensional design that doesn't necessarily explain well how it's going to look in 3D. Let's look at some of your other reference you had in here. I think, draw on some of this reference a little bit more, where the shapes have a little more anatomy to them. Although what's unclear to me about this one is how his legs and feet articulate. It's not entirely clear. Not clearly his hands don't articulate, but of course you could just decide, oh, they sort of magically bend, they don't need joints in them, and I think that's fine. And also you have to, as I mentioned before, you have to make a decision about, I think the anatomical man you had before had a separate kind of a belly area and a chest area that could bend in the middle, so you might want to consider breaking those two up like that. Or you could decide, well, this just flexes and bends like a spine, and kind of. And then I think you need, your hand design is insufficient for the model. You're going to need to get in there for detail on the hand, design each finger segment and each joint so that you can really model that. Because this is just sort of little loops that doesn't really describe the hand well. So you're going to need to either get reference or do a better design for the hand. This environment looks good. I think this could work well. I think, in fact, we're going to be doing a chair this week, so you're way ahead of the game. That's great. And I think that I like some of the details on the desk. Let's get more thought on the back walls. Window, sources of light. Is there bookshelves on the wall? Are there pictures? Is there anything on the floor? What kind of floor? Is there a rug? Just flesh out the environment around that as well. So yeah, I think this design definitely still needs work. But it's progressing, and so let's see what you do for next week. Next up is Amber, and we've got the sort of the cute boy with the drum. I think it's good progress. Some important things is that for the model you need to have the arms out to the side. I mean, it's okay if they're diagonal, but they still need to be straight. You're really going to have to work on the hands. These are insufficient detail to be able to model the hands. You might want to do a separate drawing of the hand with a hand study. I'd recommend getting some photo reference for that. I think there needs to be more facial detail, figuring out the eyelids, the eyes, a little more sense of what the nose is, how the lips and mouth come and chin and form in here. And also this head is at an angle, so make sure everything is straight. You might put some horizontal guidelines to make sure that everything matches across. These feet they look a little odd, so make sure they're looking like they're straight forward. I think the legs are very short, and that's going to make things a little bit challenging. You at least want to be able to have some kind of indication of knee and ankle. They're also very wide front to back, so that looks a little bit, I would argue, too thick front to back. So I might make them a little bit more slim, like maybe get the whole body to kind of have, you could have kind of more of a continuous shape like that. So yeah, symmetrical, straight, arms out to side or diagonal, more detail on the hands, work on the feet. I would lengthen the legs at least a little bit. This is a very, very short leg if you look at it in proportion to the torso. It just makes things difficult when you do that. So this could use some more work. And yeah, this is more, but it's I think that's helpful. I think you need to just kind of start fleshing this out with details. What else is in this space? What kind of, are there any things on the wall, on the floor? Those kinds of things. And oh yeah, so here's a photo reference. So I guess obviously this can be your reference for a lot of stuff. But I do think, what's on the floor. Is it tile? Is it what kind of what does that look like? So and there, yeah, there's some interesting things here, and the door, and the pattern on the door, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. So, but I think the main thing to focus on is the character. Next up is Katerina, and I think this is going to work well for the class. The I understand you had the different one in mind, but I think this could work good, and you can always do the paper man separately, or if you have time, you can do both. I think that the elbow pads are probably going to be on the back of the arm, because the idea is that with the palms facing down, the elbows are behind them. Unless, yeah, I think that's probably a better way to go. And then you'll need to do some detail work on the hand, maybe get some photo reference and do some detailed hand. The drawings you have now won't be sufficient to help you with the model. Um, I think a little more studies on the face, just to kind of help figure out where the chin is and some of the other shapes. I think it's pretty good shape, but also the eyes. It's really, I think there's not enough information about the eyes and eyeballs and eyelids and how those look. And then also the legs. It's looking a little bit like just a straight cylinder. I think if you can get a little bit more of an indication of knee and ankle, that's going to help. And you can always do like a little sort of ruffle at the shoe if you want. Also, the shoes I think could use a little bit more development as well. They're looking a little bit primitive right now, and I think they could use a little bit more shape to them. But overall, I think this could work well for the class and for creating a model. But I think a little more refinement would be worthwhile. So the basic idea of the environment, I think, is going to work for your piece. It's got some space. I think, maybe flesh out what's happening over here a little bit, if that's going to be in the shot. And same with these shelves. I think, and I guess just loads of photo reference. Like I would get photo reference for, the scissors and the book and the magnifying glass. Like each object you see, the stool, everything, get some photo reference for that as a guide to help you model it. Even the bookshelf, because there's little details that you don't just sort of think out of your head that will come clear in the photo. So as kind of a basic layout, it works. As far as like enough detail to use for all the models, I think you're going to need a lot of photo reference to work from. This is Ariana. So yeah, it's definitely improved over last week. I think there's still some work. There's some kind of odd shape to the arm. I think you need to get a little bit more of a sense of, the forearm and the bicep, shoulder, elbow. The hands definitely need a lot of work. That's insufficient detail to build the hands, and you may just end up wanting to use photo reference for the hands alone. I think because unless they're very stylized, using just a real one would be fine. I think the head needs to be bigger, and it also needs some work. It's lacking detail. It's like a very two-dimensional, sketchy drawing, and I think there's insufficient information there to, give you what you need to be able to build a model. And yeah, clearly, I think here the wrong proportions on the head are much more obvious. So I really think you should be working from some photographic reference to help you with your proportions, because they're pretty far off, especially the head in every way, both the overall size of the head, but also the skull shape and chin and nose. This is really not going to work for the model. So you'll need some additional reference for that, or to use something different. The body shape is better than last week, but I think it still needs some work. And again, that hand drawing is not going to be helpful for creating the model. I would say photo reference for that, and maybe some photo reference for the boots, the kind of boots you want. So I still think this needs a fair amount of work. So keep going on that. And this is a good thing to draw from. I think that's a nice design. And okay, and chair. Okay, so we're back around. So yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit more thought on, if you're just gonna try to replicate that environment, or if you're gonna do your own. And I think this one's a little sparse. I also, that kind of chair you included, you might find if you're having the character sit in, well, it might be a little challenging, although that could be some interesting animation, getting the character to sit up or stand up out of that chair. So that could be interesting. All right, we'll keep going. Next is Andrea, and it's looking really good. I appreciate you did some work on the knees, but think I might put a little, take another pass at that. Maybe get some photo reference involved because they look sort of swollen right now, and you're not getting a sense of the kneecap and bone in there and some of the shapes in there. So I might take another pass at the knee because I don't actually think that got much better. I think some of the thigh stuff is better, although there's this weird kind of edge there that's looking a little funny. Um, but overall, it's very usable, and the hand studies are good. That's going to be very helpful. Let's look at the next one. And yeah, looking very good. Again, I would take another little pass of the knees. I think that could still improve a little bit. I think you made some improvements to the lips you mentioned, and they still look pretty big to me. But you said that they match front and side, so it'll probably be all right. But yeah, it's looking great. I think this will be really, really useful for creating your model. And yeah, so it looks, as far as I know, this hasn't changed. So, but yeah, that should work well. So yeah, really nice work. So it's Joanna, and yeah, it's definitely improved. I think a lot of the body shape is better. I think there is some. I understand you've elongated the legs, although the proportion of thigh to the lower leg looks a little off to me. But if that's intentional, it can be intentional. But it does look a little weird. Um, the uh, the arms are looking on the short side. I think they're kind of coming down to here. Maybe you want them to come down to here. So you might consider lengthening the arms. I think you could really benefit from some hand studies, but I saw you have photo reference of hands, so that should be sufficient. I think you should take a little bit more time on these shapes, and how you really want those to look and get some more detail in there. And really the face and head needs a lot more detail. I think it's what you have currently is sort of insufficient to be able to create your model from this design. I'm not sure what's happening with the legs here, but you really just need to draw the one leg from the side and get that really right. And you'll notice the feet don't quite line up, and your lines aren't necessarily, or at least this line doesn't look really straight. You should make sure, use a ruler and get them really straight across, because they seem to be at like a slight angle, which is going to throw off you matching it front to side. So be careful with that. And make sure the feet are flat on the same plane as each other. And okay, so you have a good hand reference, excellent, and the feet's not bad, but I think you should resolve what's going on with those toes there. Do we see toes? Do we not see toes? I would actually be inclined to not see any kind of toes and just have the fin. And then you've got a couple photo reference in there, which is good. And then as far as the environment, did you already model this? If so, that's cool. Um, but yeah, something like that should work out well. I think the texturing is going to be challenging to make it look good, but it's definitely possible. And well, that's interesting. I guess that's just sort of more inspirational design as well as this one. So yeah, okay. We'll keep going with that. I think my big concern. I think there's still some anatomical stuff to work out on this character, but really it's the face. I think that needs a lot of attention at this point. Next up is Natalie. I think this environment drawing. I don't think this is really helpful for anything. So maybe just gather some photo reference. As far as the character, remember you do need a front and side. I think this is improved over last week. Clearly, still needs some work. Those hands aren't really helpful, so either get some photo reference for the hands or do some studies on those. I think the body shape could use some work, and Make sure the legs are parallel side by side, and also you need the side view, so you want both the front and the side view of the character to create your model. And I think the face needs some more details worked out as well. So again, if she's going to be sort of a normal human character, then I would consider just getting some photo reference that you like from 3D.sk and maybe either trace over that to kind of simplify it or stylize that or just use that. So um, yeah, so keep working on it and get some more photo reference. Next up is Yao Nan, and yeah, nice illustration of the environment. This is definitely improved. You've got some more details and stuff filling up the area, so that looks good. I think there's a little bit of repetition, like in these pans. I might try to find a way to get some variety in there. I like the knife rack here and the bottles. It's pretty sort of container heavy, which I guess maybe that's normal, but there just seems like quite a lot of bottles and jars here. So maybe mix in some boxes and books and that kind of stuff just to break it up and some variety. But anyways, it's a really good drawing and some with clearly a good sense of perspective, which is nice to see. And this has improved. Yeah, I sort of had. I think you could get. I like that you've made it a little bit more anatomical, and I think that's going to help with modeling it. But you could also kind of bring in kind of fundamental cartoon shapes. For example, you could play with kind of having an overall sort of like pear shape to the body, if that's the kind of body you want. Right now, it looks like sort of a, I don't know, it looks like a bodybuilder cat or something like that. I think that, if you want paws for hands, it's a creative decision, but the challenge is that they're going to be very difficult to hold or lift or manipulate objects with. So just keep that in mind. Um, and I think the feet could use a little bit of attention, unless that's the feet and that's how they look. So then, if that's the case, that's good. And I like this detail on the eye. I think that the mouth is of some concern because that to me is sort of like the iconic drawing of a cat's mouth, but I don't know that that would give sufficient information to know what to do when you're actually building the 3D model. So I would, edge it towards a more human mouth, but either way, you're going to need to kind of creatively flesh out what's happening with sort of the lower lip, or is it a lip, or whatever you want to call it, or the chin and those kinds of stuff. I think it just needs a little bit more attention to design and maybe some reference. Next up is Vincent, and it's nice to see how far you are along with this model already. I think that you could start getting into thinking about the details in the cell, and also if there's any sort of wear and tear you want to model in, or how this floor is built. Is there any kind of model detail on the floor, or is that all just texture? So there's some thoughts you could do around that. I think the character is looking good. Clearly, there's need to be more work on the hands. Those aren't going to be useful for modeling. And there's some kind of wacky shapes going on with his arms. I think that could use some more attention as well, to get just some, a clear shoulder shape, a clear bicep shape, clear forearm shape. Just kind of break it down into a few simple shapes. The legs are looking bowed, and I don't know if that was intentional, but I tend to think they should be a little straighter. And the feet seem to be kind of coming at an angle. But yeah, I guess they're pretty flat on the bottom, so they're just sandals. So I think the side should be helpful. You might want to get a view of, most of the time we're not doing feet, we're just doing shoes. So it's an added challenge. It's not that big of a deal, but you might want to get a view of the feet from the top. And you're definitely going to need to have to do some studies for the hands. Normally we model them palms facing down as far as the front, so you might want to do a separate drawing of those. The exaggerated nose is interesting. I like that he has a neck. I think that's good. So, and the face could work like this. I think it leaves some open-ended questions once you start modeling. But, for example, eyelids. What do the eyelids look like? Does he have eyelids? Those kinds of things. So, I think there's a few fixes you could do on this. Some conditional development. Certainly in the hands. Get a little more shape to the legs and arms. And then make some decisions around the eyes, and maybe like the hairline, where the hairline is. Um, you know, is that hair like, where does it start, where does it end? Those kinds of things. Next up is Elena, and yeah, I think this is definitely improved. It's going to be fine to work with. So I don't think you need to put robe and slippers if you want to keep him just in the underwear. I think that'll be fine. Uh, I think that his legs could use a little bit more shape. You might want to take a look at some anatomical reference. There's just some stuff. I think that you want a little bit more mass on the thigh area than you have in the lower leg, and right now they're almost even. Especially for someone who's kind of heavy here, I think he's going to have a little bit more just mass on the lower half of his body, typically. And again, you might want to look at some photo reference. 3D.sk is a good site for that. Um, I think the face is looking more detailed, and there's a lot of kind of big, clear shapes to use here, so that's good. I think you'll need some better hands to work with. So again, either getting some photo reference of hands, or doing some studies from the above with the fingers pointed straight out is going to be really helpful. And yeah, that's good to see that you've got more going on with the bathroom, and I like this image as well. So you've got a few details to add in. And you might think of what the Mr. Schneider character would have lying around in his bathroom. Is it clean? Is it dirty? Does he have a shaving kit? Whatever else the character might have. So you might want to kind of just flesh it out with a little bit, because this doesn't, like, to me, this looks, I don't know, not like a guy like the character, as far as the kind of, I mean, I think the actual physical features of it, but as far as the kind of props and the look of it, what he would have there lying around, I think you can add to the character a little bit by fleshing that out. Next up is Sharon, and yeah, this is looking great. I think, it's clearly got some good anatomical reference, good shapes. I generally, discourage tails just because it's a lot of extra work and rigging and setup. If you are going to do the tails, typically they're modeled straight out to the side, and then you bend it into whatever position you want. But it's another big thing to animate. It's really going to add to the animation time, and it's a whole other step with the rigging, which isn't that big of a deal. But so I think that what I would encourage you to do is try to do it without the tail, and then maybe in the future do another version of the character with the tail if you want to stick with it. But yeah, but besides that, I think this is mostly ready to go. I think you do need to do like some hand sketches to see what the hands are going to look like. You might want to do, because she's barefoot, and there's some stuff to resolve with the claws. So you might want to do sort of hands from above and feet from above to get some detail and see what they are. There's some creative decisions to make about how much of a human foot it is versus how much of a fox-like foot it is, and then the same with the hands. And you also might want to do another study or two on the face, and I'm not quite clear what happens here with this. Is it a mask? Is it fur? What's the transition between the two? So I think there could be some more thought on that stuff. But apart from that, this is really good work. So this should work well. And yeah, it looks like this environment is starting to flesh out. So you've got the basic layout, and that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's pretty good and ready to go. I would check proportions. Just put like some kind of dummy model in there and make sure. For some reason, the ring looks very small to me compared to, for example, this object here in the doors. So you might want to look at, like, if a door is typically, I don't know, 3.5 feet wide and 6 feet tall, look it up, and use that as kind of a measuring stick and say, well, how big is a boxing ring? Because this boxing ring looks very small to me. So check your proportions on that, and then yeah, start fleshing it. You can start fleshing out with additional details that you might find in a boxing training center. Get some photo reference on that to help you make some decisions there. But good work on. Next up is Candice, and yeah, there's some good anatomical stuff going on here. I think you need to get those kind of horizontal guidelines in to make sure everything's the same front and side. So clearly, looking like maybe things are higher here, or maybe that's the heel is lined up. But you'll want the feet facing straight forward. Make sure the legs are parallel. She's kind of a little bit of an angle here. Um, I think it's okay to have the arms kind of diagonal like that, but maybe a little bit more at a 45-degree angle, where this is a bit close to the body. So I think this can work well. You might want to do another study or two on the face to get some detail going there. Maybe try to do a three-quarter view of the face. That can be helpful as well. And it's nice that you did it from the back as well. And so this looks like about the same, but just a little kind of higher contrast, I guess. Yeah, there's some pretty good detail in there going on. It's nice to kind of have the version without all the colors distracting. I think, might want to give it a little bit more in the back of the head, but that's alright. That's looking pretty good. Okay, and this is based on some more anatomical reference. So that's looking good. It's a helpful study there. And yeah, this is you were saying you want to keep the environment pretty simple. I think it's okay. It looks pretty sparse to me. Um, but so my, it just doesn't give you that much opportunity to do that much of the environment. But so I would try to kind of give the audience a little bit more to think about, like, what is this place, where is it, what's its function, who's been there, just kind of fleshing them out. Is there any kind of ventilation? Is there any kind of control? How is the lighting built in? Can we see some of the, I don't know. I feel it looks pretty sparse to me. So you might just think about kind of giving it some more detail to help give it a sense of scale and sense of purpose. But it's an attractive looking image, so that's good work. This is Shane. Yeah, really nice work on the neck here and the neck muscles. Really appreciate that. Yeah, it looks like there's a little more thoughts in the nose here. I think I mentioned before that, just keep in mind that the eyeballs are spheres inside the head. So think about how big the spheres are, where you could even kind of sketch those in and make sure it makes sense. It looks like you have thought a little bit more about kind of the bone shapes around the eyes, and I think that's good. But remember the eye, even if the opening for the eye is oblong, the eyeball itself is a sphere. I mean, I suppose there could be creatures with non-spherical eyes, but I don't know how that would really work, so I would tend to go with spherical eyes. So I just have some concerns about that. And then think a little bit about the eyelids. How does it blink, and what are the shape of the eyelids? So you might want to do a little bit work on that. I think this is about the same, but just kind of get it real straight up and down. Seems to be leaning to one side, and check the symmetry on that. And yeah, I think this is looking good. I like that there's a little debris. It looks like there's a Happy Donut there, which is kind of funny for sort of an alien spaceship. I think that just think of purpose and function. What is this for? What are these different units? What do they actually do? Who goes there? Who uses this? And kind of let that be your guide for what this looks like. And you might need a little bit more room, like a second kind of wall, just to have some space for the camera to move a little bit. So think about, does this just go on and on? Is there two sides to it? How far up do we see? How tall is the character compared to this, and how high in the wall will we see, and therefore what is up there? So there's a few questions to answer, but the drawing is a really good one. So nice work on that.